got on with life. At that time as a documentary producer mainly for the ABC and SBS. Now, some 30 years on, I have had the time to research and write this long dormant book. As with all my books, here I approach the subject and the history in my own particular way. First and foremost, this book is rich in details and facts, yet entertaining enough to immerse yourself in. Where necessary, I backfill and contextualize the story to give readers a fuller grasp of the time in which this played out. For research, I rarely read secondary sources, relying instead on official accounts, documents and files from the time, and in this case, the SRD-Z special files held by the NAA. I have been fortunate to also have had access to some oral history interviews recorded by both Z Films in Queensland and through a program at the Australian Defence Force Academy in Canberra. Quotations, be they from interviews or documents, breathe life and passion into a story, and better inject historical accounts with a wonderful sense of sharing and inclusion. While the men and women of Special Operations Australia, SOA, and the operatives of the Z Special Unit made up only a tiny proportion of the 3 Australian armed services in the Second World War, and while their contribution is difficult to quantify, it is worthy of the highest praise and recognition, something not afforded them over the intervening years. To date, although a number of books have been written about these events, mostly by the men themselves of their particular operation, there has not been a popular history published of the range of operations undertaken by SRD in the war. Now, with very few still left alive, their incredible exploits and escapades must be shared with a wider readership. Introduction. War has always created new problems and new answers, be they tactics, equipment, weaponry or defensive works. The requirements of war have seen difficult or dangerous tasks allocated to men with special skills or capabilities to deal with them. The 300 Spartans who held the pass at Thermopylae against the might of Xerxes' Persian army and died there were the best and the bravest, as was Pheidippides, the legendary runner who, we are told by Herodotus in the Persian Wars, was a trained runner. These specialists were given a range of missions and tasks that drew on skills such as sabotage, assassination, reconnaissance, communication, or guard duties. Sun Tzu in The Art of War writes about crack armies, while the Chinese military strategist Zhang Zia writes in his 6 teachings of tactics that included specialists and elite fighting units. In the 1200s, as castles rose higher, as walls became thicker with the need for more secure defensive works, this in turn forced the development of siege tactics and the evolution of specialist engineers known as sappers. These men were required to sap forward, that is, dig a trench towards the castle they were attacking and then begin a series of enveloping circular trenches, each one closer to the walls. But the sapper would eventually come within range of weapons and projectiles, such as arrows or musket balls, and this danger increased as they sapped forward, particularly when they were in the exposed trench that needed to be dug directly towards the wall to begin the next circular trench. These sappers were, in their time, special forces, but the history of such men, their tactics and their particular style of warfare goes back thousands of years. In more recent times, the Confederate Army in the American Civil War used skilled reconnaissance and raiding parties, as did the French armies of Napoleon, who developed skirmishing tactics away from the formal battle lines and defensive squares. In 1846, the Corps of Guides were formed as part of the British Army to hold strategically important outposts on the Indian frontier and quickly became a trusted elite unit, as did the Gurkha Guides formed in 1857. Similarly, in the Boer War, there were unconventional units like the Bushveld Carbineers, the irregular mounted unit containing a large proportion of Australians, men like Harry Breaker Morant and his mate Peter Hancock. In the Great War after 1914, the German army developed special